and welcome to Beaver Politics. My name is Pixie, or Tamara, and I teach Canadian politics, or Canadian history and social studies and that kind of stuff for the Purple Crayon. And today we're going to talk about voting and the fact that we just had a federal or a provincial election in Ontario yesterday, and a very low percentage, like 38%, I think is what I saw, went out and voted in a population of 16 million people. And he ended up voting for, Ford again. Yeah, I know, right, Panda? Yeah, Harris is the polls. So again, like, I love polls and stuff. Like I said, they're great for morality. They're great to make us feel warm and fuzzy, but I take them all with a grain of salt because they can change within a blink. And they depends, like I said, on the demographic, the population, where they polled, how many people they polled. Did they do it on an online survey? Did they phone people? Like, people don't even have house phones anymore, so who are they phoning? Like, you know what I'm saying? There's just a reality of the fact. And again, today's topic is, why didn't you vote in Ontario? Don't tell me because you had a blizzard, because you didn't. And why would you vote for Doug Ford? Well, thank you very much, Caleb. I know, there's a population of 16 million people in Ontario, right? And 38% people, yeah. Well, that's good. If you're not from Ontario, then you have no grieving. You have no worries. I'm not from Ontario either. But we spent 24 hours on Beaver Politics. We try and keep the momentum going. We spent a lot of, effort trying to get people to go out and vote. Which, we can only do what we can do. I mean, again, we're not miracle workers, and you can't force anybody to do anything. But in so many other countries, your vote doesn't count, and in Canada, at least it does, right? It is really sad, Jen. It's super sad. And I mean, I'm sitting in the same situation. We had a municipal election here in my little town, and I mean, 20,000 population, and only 4,500 people went out and voted. Right? So that's not even 10%. That's whatever, right? It's disgusting. But again, like, when people think there's only 5 parties in Canada, there's not. We have several, and I just ran through the list. And if you weren't here before, and hearing people vote PC because they hate Liberal. Because they're willfully ignorant. And like I was explaining on my last show, the parties that are provincial do not coincide with the parties that are federal because they are not connected. They're not. Yeah, they're not. There are 17 registered parties in Canada. This is like right off the Elections Canada's website. So it's not that we got 5. And they all, like, if they can run a. Well, don't feel defeated because we're just getting started, right? If you're a registered Liberal and if you registered for the Liberal leadership election that's going on right now, I was grateful to be able to vote yesterday. So again, Elections Canada is trying to keep everything on the up and up as well too, even with this federal election that's going to be coming up here probably in the next 6 weeks, I would imagine. And we just have to keep the momentum going and just keep starting with community. And again, community is the thing, right? Find out who your neighbors are. Find out find out if they're on the right side of history or on the wrong side of history. Because that'll be your safety in the long run, right? Whether your neighbor's going to rat you out to the, fascists, or whether you're going to be able to go to your neighbor and say, hey, let's fight these fuckers together, right? I agree. But again, he's dropped 27 points in the last 4 weeks. It's not doing very good if you do follow the polls. So, women aren't always allowed to vote in Canada. And I'm sure many of you, if you're a woman, you know that. But right now in the United States, what they've done too is they've actually, with I think it's called the Safety Act, one of the new legislations that, old Trumpity Orange Potato with his pen wrote away. Oh, will it? So you're a schmatzy then, right, Canada goalie? Because if you're red hat, brown shirt, dude. And that's how we see you. So, no. See the purple crayon? It's going, no. How's that ketamine? Anyways, 1977, you couldn't get a credit card as a woman in Canada. Right? But again, if you're an American woman and your name doesn't match from your birth certificate to your passport, apparently your husband can vote for you. You're no longer eligible to vote. Right? How does that fly with you? Not so good, right? I wouldn't think it should because it's kind of disgusting. But hey, you all got what you voted for. I'm sorry. Today's, a little squirrely day. Okay, so we're back to what year that, actually voting in Canada started. Not how to. When? Okay, so we've got, again, from Elections Canada. I kind of don't know anyone who's watching what's going on in the US wants the same for Canada. Because they actually believe that they want to be part of that gong show down there. Dined and bought... No, he didn't. Just, your propaganda doesn't go anywhere here. So, move along before I move you along. 1867, it was 1812, we smashed your ass and actually burnt your White House to the ground. Okay, so brief history of what's going on here, like when federal rights in Canada, when you could actually start voting in Canada. Because it was 1867. Oh, that's what you meant, Sniper. Oh, sorry. Sorry, you get a check mark. And the teacher gets an axe for being snappy. Sorry. That was a good idea. That's Confederation. Exactly. Canada formed only men who were 21 years of age or older and owned property were able to vote in federal elections. People who were excluded from voting provincially could not vote federally. So that was 1867, and that was the British North American Act. Okay. And then there's also the 1876 Indian Act. Anybody know anything about that? And I don't speak on behalf of First Nations. Again, I should do an acknowledgement. It's only that I live and love and work on the beautiful nation of the Tanaha people, which is made up of 4 bands, which are the Tanaha, the Akam, the Lower Plains, and the Tobacco Plains. First Nations people's lives were governed by the Indian Act. It grants First Nations people the right to vote, but only if they give up their Indian status. So the only way you could vote, and it was the same when they went to World War I and World War II. If they chose to become Canadian and join the military, they lost their status. So that was the Indian Act, making it so they could vote if they chose to give up their status as a First Nations person. Yes, we did. Yes, you did. Are you First Nations, Sniper? My husband's First Nations. His grandfather was actually a Regina Rifle. And he actually fought World War II and Korea. So, thank you for your service. If you were part of that, or if you have family that was. Anyways, thank you for coming in, everybody. We are just a little after 3. Welcome to Beaver Politics, which with me, it's the Purple Crayon. And we're talking about voting and the fact that, anyways. Most of them, yeah. My grandparents, my grandfathers couldn't. One was constructed to the gold mines, and the other one was not medically able to go. But they're brothers and sisters, and my grandfather had a family of only one sister, and she volunteered to be a nurse in World War II. So we've got lots of my one cousin just retired from the Canadian military. Okay, so we got the 1917 Wartime Elections Act and Military Voters Act, which was the next legislation in tune from 1876 and then, till 1912 in Canada. And, or 1917, sorry. So during the First World War, all males and female members of the armed forces serving overseas and female relatives of soldiers were offered the right to vote. And that was before the 20s. For women. Okay? So, the first time that some women and some men under the age of 21, some Asian Canadians and some First Nations people can vote in a Canadian federal election, and that was 1917. And that was because if you were serving in the armed forces. So if you were in the armed forces, serving in the armed forces during World War One, the First World War, as a woman and a First Nations person, you were able to vote prior to women's rights in 1920. So there's that. Then we got 1918, actually, and many women can finally vote federally in Canada. So it was 1918 that actually Canadian women have the right to vote in a federal election if they meet the same eligibility criteria as men. So that meant that they have to be over the age of 21, and they had to own property. So if you were, a female in Canada in 1918 and owned property, you could vote. But you had to have the same, over 21 and own property. Because even in Canada, if you were 21 years old and the male and didn't own property, you couldn't vote. Or were First Nations. Or Asian. Right? So we've had some stipulations and changes, several of them. Okay? So we're going to get into 1920, which would be the next Domino Election Act. Or Dominion, sorry. Domino. Sitting over here. It's the Dominion Act. Dominion Election Act, which is a new elections law brings in major changes such as the appointment of a chief electoral officer. One of their first tasks is to add women to the federal voting list. However, the voting rates across Canada are still inconsistent for some racial groups. And that was 1920. Oh, really? That's awesome. Well, like I said, but again, I don't speak for First Nations ever. I'm not First Nations, and I like to have contributors that are First Nations come up and speak. I mean, my husband's here; he can come and speak on it, but he probably wouldn't. But I can speak about his family, which were First Nations or are First Nations, and they did fight in the military. Okay, so we are going to go now to 1934. When the Inuit were disqualified from elections. So legislation specifically excluded Inuit from voting in any federal election. I wish I did. That'd be awfully cool. I have some friends that are lawyers. I kind of have a little bit of a illegal beagle brain too. A lot of years of working within policy party stuff, and also some Mary Jane Act stuff, and working in that algorithm since 2006. So I appreciate that, Sniper. That's awesome. Okay, so where were we at here? The Inuit were disqualified from voting in 1934. That's kind of what the fuck, right? So we're going over some voting this is all online on the Elections Canada. .ca page, which is where I'm referencing this. But today we're going over the fact that people are apathetic and they don't vote, and people feel that it's not their voice doesn't matter, and it does. And the fact that the voting 38% of the population of Ontario went out and voted last night is not good. And the last few federal elections, and especially in my area too, the voting rates are low because people just don't care, don't want to know. They could give you every excuse in the book as to why they don't. First Nations, I totally understand why some of them don't vote, or if they do vote, I understand. They've been treated poorly and had, no ability to vote because, pretty much, and if you speak to some of them, they're First Nations. They've got their own sovereignty, and their treaties and their agreements don't coincide and don't feel like they're Canadians. Like they're part of Canada, or part of our country, Turtle Island. But again, it's just, illusion. No, Bob, that's not actually the way it works, but okay, if that's how you feel, that's okay. But it's not an illusion, because if you feel like you haven't voted ever, then I guess that's probably why you feel it's an illusion. Because you do realize there are countries that don't get the chance to do that, right? They're so oppressed. And even if they put their ballot in the box, it doesn't matter, right? You do know that. And you do realize that people went to war and fought fascists for your ability to actually vote, right? In a democracy. So you cannot invalidate people's lives for fighting and dying for your freedom to live in a democracy. So that's kind of, that's one mark against you with the purple crayon. Bob. Bob Jones. Remember that crayon? Yeah, that's a really shitty thing to say. Just saying. I mean, it's not perfect. But again, you're not voting for Trudeau. You're not voting for Elizabeth May or Polyev. You're voting for best representation of your area, of your riding. And that person, your MP, should be working hand in hand with your MLA and your municipal councils to do what's best for your area. And if they're not, then they're not doing their fucking job. Facts. I vote for the best person in my riding, and usually it is either one of those two. I would never vote Conservative ever, because I'm not a schmatzy. And I believe in equality. And I don't believe that First Nations should be 112 down on our list for, policies and declarations and importance. If you care and you give a shit about people, it means you're woke. And if you're a selfish son of a bitch and a racist, that means you're a schmatzy. It wasn't just a party in Germany, dude. Google it. It's free. Anyway, we're back to the 1934 Inuit Act. We'll bring it back around to the topic. Suffering. How are you suffering? You've been suffering so bad, Bob. Did you take COVID checks? Do you have a job? Do you have health care? What province do you live in? Blame your premier, because probably all your problems are jurisdictional. Suffering under a liberal government. You realize the liberal government opened a whole new industry that's brought in over $60 billion to your province? Or more? And if you live in Alberta, we bought you a fucking pipeline. Sit the fuck down, dude. Well, that's what I said. We bought him a pipeline, yet his premier seems to be keeping that 200 barrel a day money in her pocket. How about the corruption? And where's the Tylenol, Bob? Okay, because I'm in British Columbia, actually, and I grew up in Alberta. My family's still in Alberta. My parents are still in Alberta. So no, I'm probably the last person you want to square around with when it comes to politics, especially, Alberta politics. So we're going to go right into the 1948 next act, Actually, Mississippi of Canada. We have 1948, which all Asian Canadians gain the right to vote. So the federal vote is now open to Canadians, regardless of provincial exclusion. Japanese, Chinese, and other Asian Canadians can vote federally, no matter which province that they live in. And that took till 1948. Meanwhile, they'd been here for decades, building railroads and paying taxes and raising their families and buying houses and paying taxes. I wouldn't believe it. New Orleans ain't that much. New Orleans is pretty bad, too. I got a friend that lives in New Orleans. He tells me it's scary. I didn't walk down there. 1950, Inuits are now able to vote. Yay! So an Inuit obtained the right to vote in Canadian federal elections in 1950. So from 1934, though, till 1934 till 1950, I'll say that again, the Inuit were not eligible to vote in Canada. Let me dive into why in a minute, but that's kind of, but again, right? That's how it kind of goes with, Okay, so now we're going to go ahead to the 1960s. First Nations women and men can finally vote. So, hey, Michael, how are you doing today? We're just doing some voting history, right? Because the elections in Ontario were kind of pitiful, to say the least. So this is kind of disheartening when, no disrespect to the Asians, but when Asians can vote before First Nations people in Canada, that's kind of, what the fuck? Yeah, 38% of the population. And again, they act like they're, I'd like to hear there's every excuse, right? Every excuse. Oh, I wanted to vote for Trudeau, or I didn't want to vote because of Trudeau. Whatever, it's always Trudeau's fault. They come up with that one. I just can't get over that. I'm over it, they're not. Okay, so we're going back to 1960. With First Nations, women and men were able to vote no matter where they lived and without giving up their Indian status. Prior to, they could, if they gave up their Indian status. And I hate saying that word. Indigenous status. I just hate that word. Sorry I even said it. That's awesome. Like I said, everybody who was able to vote then did. we were, that's, good. I'm very happy about that. But again, there's so many people that are apathetic that just choose not to. They don't want to. They don't feel it doesn't matter. I didn't have time. You didn't have time, so you're going to watch your healthcare get flushed down the toilet because you didn't have time. That's a good, yeah, it's a good way of saying it, Michael. My husband's non-status. But, you know, like, again, like, there are so many countries in the world that you can vote, but your vote doesn't count. Like, you know, the Russia. How about China? You know, there are places that your vote doesn't matter, and they're so oppressed they don't even get to vote. You know how happy Sri Lankans are that they're getting a new government in Bangladesh? That they're actually, like, they fight in the streets, they die in the streets, fighting with military and police over democracy? Like, is it gonna take that orange potato pushing over our borders for us to get it? Like, what are you guys waiting for to finally get it? Is that what you're waiting? Because that's, you know, like, you know, Russia with the Ukraine, right, Michael? Like, seriously, like, what are these people waiting for? Oh, just hand themselves over. There's a border near you. Go jump over it. Anyways, thanks for coming out. Ooh, thanks for tapping and clapping. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so we're talking about elections, right? We're doing the past history. Hi, Meiji Mama. Of the, like, prior to, you know, the rundown of history of voting in Canada. So we've already been from the beginning, which was 1876. When that was the Indian Act. Sorry, 1867. When we worked into Confederation, right? And so we're now getting into 1960s. It was 1960 before First Nations were able to vote. If this isn't the line that has been crossed somewhat, right, Scott? Like what? What's the line? And then you got traders, people that just... Anyways, you guys keep getting me off topic. I quit looking at that. No, I guess I do have to look at that too. But again, we're talking about voting too, because in the history of voting. And the fact that, you know, Ontario was so apathetic. And it's just kind of, it's hurtful. It hurts. Because we've got a federal election coming up. And again, you have a small population of people that actually care, and Conservatives go out and vote. And this one, they're really going to go out and vote because they're going to stick it to the Liberals, right? So we got to get out there. In 1982, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was written. Bet you didn't know that. Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms affirm the right of everybody in Canada, every Canadian citizen, to vote and to stand as a candidate. And that's what true democracy is, that every citizen can vote and stand as a candidate. There are stipulations to that too, but I mean, you can have a criminal record in Canada and run as a candidate. You most certainly can. Are people... I don't blame them. I totally don't blame them. And again, you know, that's understandable. And I know that some First Nations people believe that... Again, I can't speak for them, but this is my experience with speaking to some of them, that they vote for their chief and their band members, and that should be all that is necessary for their sovereignty and where they live. And I agree. But again, it doesn't help on the federal level when they're trying to finish and roll with reconciliation and try and get some things done. And that means that they need to have representation in Parliament to absolutely get some things done. And I hate to say that, but we need more First Nations representation in Parliament, to be honest. I feel that we should have more MPs that are First Nations. I feel like our Prime Minister should be First Nations, to be fair. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just saying. Like, if you want a real good shake-up, let's do it right from the bottom up, right? And start really reconciling and start voting for more First Nations people. But again, that would mean that they would have to be able to want to step up. And it's hard enough for a woman to step up in politics. It's hard for a man to step up. It's a hard job. You're putting yourself out there for public service to everybody and everybody, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's a fact. There's no sleeping. There's emails to be answered. There's people, your constituents. Never mind, you're working in Ottawa. You're back and forth between your family. It's a long, hard. It's not an easy life. So, never mind, it costs you lots of money even to become a candidate. and do the work. The Liberals actually changed some of their rules to becoming a candidate. They don't want just anybody showing up. They want yeah, you could. That would be great too. Again, I can't speak for them, but if that's something that they should be encouraged to do, yes, absolutely. And education, as much as they can get, and start working towards making a better Canada for all of us. I feel that's one of the only ways we're going to get anywhere, to be honest, is if First Nations generations, but there's healing still, right? There's so many things. But again, the ability for them to go to school for post-secondary is there, and I would hope that more of them will want to start taking it. But I think as the healing process moves forward in a good way, that's probably a possibility, right? Okay, so Confederation was 1867. Voting was considered a privilege. Only select people could vote. Men age 21 or older who were British subjects by birth or naturalized citizen and owned property. These rules excluded a large majority of the population of Canada from voting. Only about half the adult male population could vote because property owners, right? Really? I think it's that way everywhere, Mike, to be honest. Shortages of everything. Good quality people. And I don't know why. Because, oh yeah, I have to wear a mask. Oh my God, not a mask. Who knows what the problems are. Like when I read, let's just put it this way. I think I did a video. Measles. Does that tell you what the mentality of people are? Measles. Like, poof. I just can't even believe it. Anyways, thanks for coming in, everybody. Tapping is clapping and sharing is caring. And we're talking about Canadian voting and the history of voting and why you should vote in Canada, because we do have a federal election that's going to be coming up fairly shortly. It looks like Newfoundland Labrador is going to have a federal election or a provincial election coming up, because I just seen that their premier has resigned or says he's not going to run again, which is, it's heartbreaking, because he was awesome, but he's also a medical doctor, and I understand that he wants to go back to his practice and being effective. Being a medical doctor or being a politician, I'd be a doctor too. Oh yeah, I sure do. One of their biggest funders is probably one of the people that I used to work for in Central Alberta. He's one of the biggest farmers in the province. He's one of the biggest financial contributors to the federal Conservative Party. I know that for a fact. Just saying. Because they're sidewinding shady motherfuckers. All of them. So, when you think that, when I say schmatzy, I think it's even worse than that, because they're shady on top of it. And with this corruption that's going on in Alberta right now, I'm just like, I'm not even shocked. Like, not even for half a minute, because first of all, she's been trying to sell her own business for months, because she couldn't even run a restaurant fiscally enough to keep it viable. So if you can't run a fucking restaurant to keep it viable, you shouldn't be running the government. But who am I to say anything, right? Like, ooh, don't say anything bad about Danielle Smith. What are you gonna do? Oh, you might cut. The saddest part about it is they've arrested people for saying stuff. In Quebec, there was a girl that was arrested in camera at a public library board meeting because she stood up and spoke her mind, and one of the schmatzis didn't like that, so they called the police. What? What did I just say? Are you kidding me? Not kidding me. So, actually, only 17 households donated to UCP in my area, and they max out all donations. So if you break it. And you're in Alberta? In your area, so that means that you're probably in the Hanna area. Red Deer, Central Alberta, Ponoka. Valley View is oil. My hubby works in Valley View quite a bit. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right there, Mike. That's exactly what happens, is that the small population actually then oversee what the large population has to go through, and then you're screwed, and then you're bitching, but yet you didn't get off your ass to vote. And the rural population in Alberta has always, for some reason, always went blue. right? And you have like the larger population, which is around Edmonton, Calgary, that are more, liberal leaning NDP, because that's, liberals have been, since David Schwann stepped down of the liberal leadership in Alberta in 2010, there hasn't really been a liberal party in Alberta. I went to, in 2014, I went to the I went to, the Liberal convention in Montreal as the delegate for the Crowfoot riding. And there'd never been a delegate from the Crowfoot riding there before, ever, in history. And I don't think there was ever one again. And we had a riding association, but I think it was made up of 4 people, kind of like where I am here. I've got people that wanting to volunteer. I'm getting, emails saying I want to volunteer, but until the leadership race is over, there's not much anybody can do until we're, ready to go. We got a guest wanting to pop up. Who do we got here coming up? Oh, hi, PG. You can come on up. Up. How you doing today?
Hey, what up?
So we're also, yeah. So again, we're just, yapping about politics as usual, because it says Beaver politics, so it's not like I'm getting off the subjects. But many decades after 1867 and 1920, a property-based qualification required you had to have property to actually be able to vote. Um, or voters either to a property to a certain value, pay rent, or make a certain annual income. So I guess up until 1920, you had to either be a property owner, have a certain income level, be over the age of 21 to be able to actually eligibly vote. Interesting, hey?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I
not
guess the
correct. There's
rule was
election. We're
because you
waiting
have
for
to.
an election. Oh yeah, well you guys are Mike's sitting there waiting for an election. Well, waiting for election is hard, especially I think you got another 3 years in Alberta to wait for an election.
You're not wrong. Well, you might be wrong because there are calls to for Danielle Smith to resign, right?
Yeah, we could only be so freaking lucky. That would just be. But you know what? She is such a douchebag. She would never resign. Like
That's
she
true.
even like when Jason Kenney resigned, I was kind of shocked that even he stepped down because he's such an arrogant twat too. But for I don't think she would ever step down. I think she's too arrogant. Hi Desiree, how you doing today?
I'm all right, in between raging, but I'm all right. So,
I think that's a general response today. I think for a lot of us, and probably more Ontarians than anywhere else, though, right?
yeah, I'm from the black delegation on the voting stuff, the historical voting stuff. On this last day of Black History Month.
It is. It is the last day of Black History Month, and we should actually maybe go over some of that. And
How
now
do
that
you
you're here,
how
well,
do you
go
think
ahead.
Black History Month played out on TikTok? From my perspective, it looked like there was a lot of Black History stuff that must have been suppressed because I did not see a lot of it.
Yeah, I was posting some stuff. There's some Canadian content that is not getting pushed. I just came across it by fluke. There's because I have American friends, their stuff is not being pushed either.
Yeah. Yeah, I have American friends too, and that's what I'm saying. Like, because I don't really make content, I just kind of amplify other people's content. Because people will do better content than I'll ever make anyway, right? And then people have their their issues that they want to push out. So I feel like if I push out other people's content, then that's kind of what I do. But anyway,
I
all
do
that.
that too.
Yeah, all that to say, I have not seen. Now, granted, I was in Mexico for almost 2 weeks, um, but even the rest of the month, I didn't see it. It's being suppressed for sure. Like it's crazy.
I did see some Canadian content for Black History Month. Not a lot, but some.
Mine.
And then I tried amplifying what I could by reposting that as well. But there was one Canadian content creator that was putting out some things as well. So, and
Creates.
we've got a comment up here. Um,
We do need voter reform.
Well, like I was talking before, PG, we have, like, it's not like we don't. We already have really first past the post. We have like 17 parties in this country. We
Yeah.
do. And I read them all off. You can go to Elections Canada. I can read them off again. There's 17 registered parties on the Elections Canada site. That was the whole point of doing this kind of set of the program, right? Because people were saying, well, first past the post. Again, that's all great and fine and dandy, but when I say look at Israel and people go, wait, no, we're not Israel, but they've got first past the post in Israel, right? Right now, you see with the breakdown of how many parties are sitting at that table, and they're not able to actually represent anything because there's too many of them at the table. So
Well,
again, people don't like the fact that we go back and forth between liberals and NDPs, but there are there's 17 parties in this province or in this country that if you actually got some momentum behind them and actually made some noise, you could, right? But nobody does. They stick to the same five parties. But the bloc wasn't very, withstanding for many years either. It's taken a long time for them to build up.
We need to do something more like what Australia does with their voting.
I'm
I
not
think we need to
familiar.
do a hybrid system because I agree with you. Like the first past the post works, and probably if more people vote or enough people vote, we're going to get the real representation of the people, and I'm fine with that. But people aren't voting, so I think we kind of need to go hybrid with making it mandatory, but also I've
The
been
Australia.
I've been saying this for days now. I want to look into like Germany's system because I think they work on a some kind of a system where they have to work together somehow. There's like they one party wins and then everybody else like has to work as a coalition or something along those lines.
But
Well, it's kind of like
no,
the way
I
we
think
like, we've got if you've got a minority government, you have to have, another party to hold you up, like we did with the NDP, and it wasn't a coalition; it was in a collective agreement. But
Yeah.
again, the NDPs and Liberals. Here's the thing, though: the NDP and Liberals have several policies, genuine that are fairly similar. Like the Liberals actually have a it's called the Health Act that was written in our policies in 1997 when Jean Chrétien was the Prime Minister of Canada. And it had dental and pharmacare and eye care and hearing care and all kinds of stuff in it, but it always gets tanked. And it comes down to the fact that it's hard to get another party to hold up that legislation and vote on it so that it actually will pass through. And then it's got to go through the Senate and it's got to be well ascended and da, 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 da. It takes a lot of time, right? I like to get past that point. I like to like not knock the Senate out completely, but I wish that we didn't have such a long process for processing any legislation that has to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
It takes everything always like, and we're talking. And I don't like to use the word red tape because that's not what I mean. Because there's a lot of things that need regulation, right? There's lots of things that need to have the bureaucrats there. Things don't move, but they don't need to move as slowly as they do. Like even getting a relicensing for MJ when you're a medical patient takes you 10 weeks. And that's because, well, lack of staff. And then they say they're overstaffed and or not they say, but people are saying, oh, there's fraud and there's this and that in the states. Pardon me, right now, try phoning any one of those social security places or any of those places or any of those entities. There's nobody there. So how is that helping the people?
No, they're not helping the people.
So if we did that
There's
here, how would
there's
we be helping the people? If we cut, because Harper did that. Harper cut out veterans offices, and Harper cut out to the point it, the medical MJ program. Their budget wouldn't even allow them to buy a new lamination machine, so we never got cards with our pictures on them anymore.
wow. Yeah, well, Christy was saying the other day she made a post, and I didn't know this number, but she was saying that there are 25 countries in the world that have a full democracy. So we are one of 25 countries in the world that have a democracy where we can vote in our leaders and actually have a say if we show up to vote. And
And we
like
don't.
we don't. But one of the things that like we've been talking about is people around the table have always been like, oh, we don't talk politics or religion or money, right? Those are three important things that people need to talk about. Politics, you don't do politics. Politics happens to you. And so whether you want it or not, right? Like whether you want it or
Right.
not. Like you can close your eyes and say, "Well, I don't want to vote. I don't want anything to do with politics." They'll happen to you. It'll happen to you, right?
Well,
Like
that's the thing. Like
you will
everything that
be
you touch in
affected.
your life, when you say you don't want to be involved in politics, you don't follow politics, right down to the water that runs out of your tap is because of politics and the taxes that you pay. So as you're
Exactly.
bitching and complaining about paying taxes, then don't drink any fucking water.
Yeah.
Don't
And
drive on the roads.
exactly.
You know,
And
don't use your electricity.
yeah, it's all political stuff. And to the point that you had earlier when you were talking about, rural areas, and rural areas have a tendency of voting conservative, which, okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around this because rural areas are the ones that are most, do I say, forgotten or pushed back, or like we don't care about you guys from politics, like they don't care, right? So they're
Well, they're
like,
used to being treated like crap, so
yeah.
conservatives just
Yeah, because people look at the rural areas, and politicians will look at the rural areas and go, these people don't have anything anyway, so there's nothing to take, there's nothing to deal with, just let them be whatever, right?
until
And
until now, until
until,
now when
yeah,
they're
And it's
until now when their little hospital ER rooms are getting
correct,
it's
closed.
such
yeah,
a
and
And they're losing their doctors'
monstrosity.
clinics, and that's when they start paying attention. And it's like, oh, what did we
yeah,
do?
yeah, but they don't get it. They still vote conservative. So this is what I can't wrap my head around, right? Like, and
Because they're brainwashed.
what
They're
they
literally
do,
brainwashed and indoctrinated by their parents, and their parents before them. Like I've literally had a guy come, like he's from Pinoca, right? He's my cousin's daughter's boyfriend, and he sat in my backyard trying to tell me there was no First Nations that ever walked over that land, and that that's why his family had to come there and uh, and make it a finer society. I almost they were asked to leave,
it's insane. It's insane.
right? So
But
again,
they're
mandatory.
also
Like I go
taught.
back to Desiree, she was saying about Australia. You were saying, PG, they have mandatory voting in Australia, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
But
And
if
what
you
are the
don't vote,
consequences? Do you know the
they're also
consequences?
they're also taught that if they're not conservative, they're soft people, right? So you hear that all the time. Like you guys, oh, you soft liberals and this and that, and you guys can't do anything. And it's like we can do anything you can do. We're
We just
not
care.
different. We're not different. We're not different. Built different.
No, I
We're
don't
not like
understand that either. Like I don't understand when being compassionate and caring about your neighbor all of a sudden became a dirty
yeah,
word.
yeah. Being compassionate about like and caring doesn't mean we're feeble. I don't get why do they think that? Like
the
it's
twisted
crazy.
They're
part about
mistaking our
that
kindness for weakness, I guess, and that's the
Mhm.
thing. I think a lot of people underestimate and do they mistaken our kindness for weakness, kind of like with Canadians always saying, "I'm sorry." Yeah, well, I'll give you something to be sorry for, motherfucker.
the
Right? Like,
twisted part about that is out in the farming communities, they're the first to help their neighbors. So
Yep,
their logic makes no sense.
yep. The logic isn't there. The logic is absolutely
they
not
also
there.
are anti-immigrant. They're also don't want anybody else, and that's the funniest thing. They're anti-immigrant, yet they're immigrants here. Like that, I think that's what slays me the most is they don't want anybody coming in and changing things because they come in and they impose their this and that. You did the same bloody thing when you came here and your family bought that homestead for $1. Shut up,
That's that privilege there, right?
right?
Because the majority, like back at when my mother's grandfather came from Austria-Hungary, it was the majority of the immigrants were white.
They were,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
trying to
because
they're trying to bring it back to that, right? Like
Yeah.
even this whole selling of the gold card in the States is all about bringing white people from mostly from South Africa. They're talking about bringing apartheid back, and so yeah, and you're right. We're claiming our flag back, right? Like I think that was an inevitable occurrence. I think that like that our flag was hijacked for long enough.
But two things can be
Enough.
right at the same time.
Correct.
People
Yeah.
can still be pissed off with what's happened in this country, but still claim their flag.
yeah,
Hmm.
and and no government we've had in my whole lifetime has been perfect, right? And there's always going to be faux pas and scandals, and if there isn't, then it's not politics. I hate to say that everybody's like, it's like, oh come on, like you haven't seen this before.
It's
Like
human
seriously,
nature. You know, people screw up.
You know, the scandals
for
that we talk about is basically the equivalent of buying a pizza on Friday when you really should have paid your phone bill, right? Like it's it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. I know it's bullshit, and I know that but we have to have the guardrails to protect against that kind of
absolutely.
stuff, and then we need the oversight, right? And when you elect a majority, there's no oversight. There's no.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, as long as we always maintain rule of law, right, and we don't get the Supreme Court of Canada saying that the Prime Minister's got carte blanche for whatever he wants to do as long as he's the Prime Minister,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
See,
know.
for
But we
me,
also don't have a stacked Supreme Court either. Like, our Supreme Court judges are, it's not the same pathway. You
right.
know what I'm saying? They're not appointed.
Yeah, for me, I think like the screw up is bad, but what's worse is how you mess up the restitution and owning your screw up. To me, if you don't own your screw up and you're talking out the side of your mouth, Marlena, that's way worse. And you doubling down and you don't ever admit, you know, whoever is, you know, in parliament doesn't ever admit, yes, we screwed up and this is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah. GP's real name was Jeff, by the way. Also,
Yeah.
Trudeau did fix a large number of the reservation water problems, and people are being performative about that, and they're
Well, here's
saying
the thing,
like the
CPG.
right.
We had an Indigenous creator on last night or the night before on Treaty's show, and he was saying that all the northern Quebec reservations have drinking water. There's not one boil water advisory on any of the northern Quebec reservations. No, sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead, PG.
None of them. None of them.
None of the reserves in Quebec have boil water advisories. They all have drinking water. Quebec is one of the provinces, and I think there's only like I think there's a total of 182 that were actually do have actual like there's no issues with their water anymore. There was a lot before. I can look that up, but again, I think there's only a couple that don't have drinking water right now, and one is because of due to muskeg and keeping the water treatment plant running without having people like not having people that are educated to be able to run that water treatment plant. So they're waiting for some education to be finished, right? Kind of thing. There's people that are taking the courses and trying to get prepared to do these jobs because you can't just throw somebody into a water treatment plant and say, "Here you go, have fun."
Yeah, good luck with that. I have heard stories, and I have heard different stories as well. Whereas, like because everything they get is from the federal government. Like if they need a part, they have to get it from the federal government. And there's it's not like just going to get, like the city will just order it from wherever. I don't know where they get it from, right? I don't work for the
I'm
city,
not sure.
but like they have their where they go get it. It's part of their budget for maintenance, all that kind of stuff. Everything's fine. But at the water treatment plant and on the reserve is like if a part breaks, then they have to go to the okay, see you later, keep on. They have to go to the federal government and get their funding to get that part, and there could be delays, right? Because you can imagine what it's like to deal with the federal government all the time, right? So
Technically,
And
there's
that's
still wards.
ridiculous. Like,
There's still
why
wards of the
can't,
crown because there's still wards of the crown.
yeah, I think
yeah,
they should be,
Yeah.
if they have a water treatment plant, they should be given a budget, or they should be allowed to tap into uh, maybe the neighboring city and so on, right? So there's got to be some kind of a communication and cooperation there, in my opinion.
you
No,
know
I
how
agree.
cities have their own, and I can't remember the word, but they have their own like little stockpile of stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
cities do, but
Yes, but
yeah,
what I'm saying is the federal government should have their own little stockpile to service, because they know this stuff's
What
going
they
to
should
break.
have is their own procurement ministry for
Yes, thank you. That's what I'm looking for, procurement.
yeah,
You can have for this, so that okay, They send off whatever, we need this, and the part comes because it's in procurement already.
Yeah.
Instead of this nonsense that
Right.
happens.
And I think there's like thank you, Genuine. So yeah, there's 147 reserves were resolved or solved and 34 unsolved. And that's
Yeah.
all since 2015.
But what
This prior
happened in
to that, the
2015?
Conservatives had done absolutely nothing but apologize.
Yeah, what happened in 2015 that could have made that difference? I don't know.
Oh,
But thank you for bringing up those numbers. I love it when the chat fact checks and
yeah. Well, that's good because we all need to be fact checked sometimes, right?
These
yeah,
are
yeah,
engaged.
That's why I keep my computer on next to me when I'm doing this, because if I ever need to make sure that, especially because I'm trying to push out Canadian history, make sure that it's factual. I don't ever
yes,
want to be putting out misinformation to anybody. And why I like having some BIPOC and some First Nations people along with me, because because when you're speaking about Canadian history, you're speaking about all of it. You're speaking about colonization, you're speaking about First Nations, you're speaking about BIPOC populations, and I don't think it's my place to speak on their behalf.
I like it when you fact check too. That's good.
Hi, Joe.
There are times when I'll be up here and I'll be like, okay, well, I'm gonna say something and somebody fact check me because I'm not 100% sure if it's right. So I'm fine with that. If I say something that's not accurate, then somebody fact checks me. I'm good with it because
No, Tyson. Do we know you, and what do you want to contribute to the conversation? Right now, we're talking about stats on the last election in Alberta, which is what I'm looking up for. And I'd like Desiree to pick up some more about the Black History Month, because today is the 20th of February, which is the last day of Black History Month in Canada. Because the whole month of February, and we were speaking about this before, about the fact that it's been suppressed on TikTok, that we're not seeing much of it, if any. And so I'd like to speak a little bit more about Black History Month in Canada, because the fact that there was a large population in Halifax, in Nova Scotia, that lived in squalor and in ghettos for decades.
They didn't get their 40 acres and a mule either.
You didn't get shit.
Right.
No reconciliation with that.
No. No. And what they did to Africville and then apologized later with a plaque? Come on.
Slap. Just disgusting. And the fact too that First Nation or BIPOC people, black men, started hockey. Anybody know that?
Yep.
There's so much that is missed out with, and I mean, Canada's very diverse. Like, let's face it, right? But we also have a lot of bigotry in here,
yeah.
in this country.
Yeah.
Tyson has a question apparently. Do you want to let
Yeah, I'm
Tyson
seeing
up?
this, but again, then he can put it on the screen then, because I don't see any invite or any request to come up. So, and I'm kind of, I preferred being with people that I know. I'm looking up stuff here. But there's so much to know. So, it's been actually, Black History Month has been observed in Canada for 55 years, which is amazing, like, to be honest. I don't see anybody in here. No, I do not see your request here at all. And then that's asking, where is Black History Month in Canada? Everywhere. Hello.
Where? What do you mean?
Do there's black people in pretty much every
Like what?
city.
Like where is it? Well, it's everywhere. Like what kind of question is that? Where's Black History Month? What? Thanks for coming in. We appreciate you. And remember, everybody, I'm going to do a shameless, shout out. Clapping is tapping, and sharing is caring. And if you feel like giving us a gift, that'd be great, because we're trying to keep this network thing going. And there's I think 10 of us in total now that actually do shows, pretty much morning till night, 7 days a week. Where's Christmas? I don't know. That's what we know where Christmas is. It's a myth. All right. So like I said, we're going to go back to Black History Month. Because there are different communities too, like, never mind Africville. across the country. Toronto too's got a huge population. Vancouver too. I remember when I was a kid,
Edmonton.
we had a lot of Eastern Asians too that came to Canada as well. There's been immigration in our country since the beginning of our country. In fact, we're immigrants.
Yeah, Edmonton has the third or fourth highest Black population in front of Vancouver.
Right. And there's lots of Jamaicans too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's we've been here since the mid 1600s. We've been here.
Right? You didn't get here just like kids just hitched a ride.
Well, I mean, depends on your definition of hitched a ride.
Well, it wasn't voluntarily.
No,
Well, you know,
not initially.
no. And I mean, again, I can't speak for anybody of that community, but I would hope that some of them were able to do things because they wanted to.
Well, at the War of 1812, um, the Black population who served with the British that were enslaved in the U.S. were promised things that they never got. So some of them went to Sierra Leone, some of them went back to the U.S., and some of them stayed here. So,
Right. And again, there are so many different ethnicities that fought with the French and the British that were never even recognized.
yeah,
Like prior to even colonization of the northern extremities of like North America. Like let's talk about Spain and South America, right? Like if you want to go way back, and let's talk about Africa and India and all the other colonization that was done prior to North America, right?
yeah.
I know. And it's like, oh, conquered. Nothing was conquered. Get that off the plate. That's not even a word that should be coming out of your mouth. We're not talking like the gladiators here, right?
That whole word conquered, we got it pummeled into us in school, you know.
And as far as I'm concerned, we fed a lot of propaganda to make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
that we all stay within the masses that stay controllable.
But it's victory. The history is written by the victors, and now we're all starting to say, that's not exactly how that went down.
Right? And
Conquered
that's why
people don't sign
I
treaties.
don't ever. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Conquered people don't sign treaties.
Right? Or with agreements with the crown.
Yeah, they don't do that. They get squashed. They don't sign anything.
There's nothing to sign. It's like, here, we're taking you.
Yeah.
Bye. And
Yeah.
we got prisoners. We got political prisoners. And, like that's how invasions happen. I don't see anybody asking the Gazans if they, want to sign a treaty. But again, it's non-comparable. But is it?
I mean, to a point, but modernized, I think.
It's disgusting on all levels, no matter when it was done. To be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no conquered.
land grab, right?
Conquered people do not sign treaties or have status
Right.
or have to walk away from that status to be able to vote. That kind of disgusts me, honestly. I knew it was bad, like, because I know that my husband's grandfather went to fight for in the Second World War, and he had to become Canadian to do so, and he lost his status, which took until 2 weeks after his death to be able to get back.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think at this point they were able to get it back, right? It was like in the 1980s or something. It was like 84.
1984,
Yeah.
because that's when Percy got his back, and he died in 1983.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and his family, like Alvin doesn't have I'm not sure exactly what the whole thing is, but yeah, he's not status. So, but it just kind of kills me that that's the way it was for any BIPOC or anybody that wasn't of Caucasian or European descent about voting in this country. Oh, we know.
Zionist lobby. Yeah.
We know. We absolutely know.
I'm
And
I'm not that PG, by the way, just so you know. Different person.
right. And again, not all people of Jewish persuasion are Zionists.
Right.
So there's a difference.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'd like to make that clear too, because we don't want to ever discriminate against anybody with a kind heart.
I get accused of that a lot. Well, a lot. Enough. Like every once in a while, somebody comes in from another algorithm and they're like, they come at me because there's somebody called PG who's like a big Zionist. I've only heard her speak once, but
Right, right, Joe. That's exactly it. We're not anti Semitic by any stretch. I'm pro life and pro choice and pro Palestine. But that happened long before the war started. I've been pro Palestine for about 20 years because this isn't just new. This is old.
yeah.
It was along with being involved with just human rights and civil rights in general. But university did this to me when I was 33 years old. And then I got political, and then I saw a cannabis patient or MJ patient being put in jail in Calgary, Alberta. And that was all over it. We started protesting, and it was just, yeah. Just kind of go from there. So, Black History Month, last day is today. Again, there's educational packages you can get at canadahistory.ca where you can read several articles and different achievements of many Black Canadians in Canada that contributed greatly to our history, including the beautiful woman that's on our $10 bill.
And the Canadian Encyclopedia also has a lot of Black history.
Right. Well, I don't think that enough people are aware. And and I hate to say this, I love having history months and, appreciation days and, Secretary Day and, Valentine and all these days. But we should be respecting every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't have to have a history month. We should be educating our children daily about the vast history that this country offers on all levels. From all
And
people.
if that happened, it wouldn't be necessary to have a Black History Month because Black History is 365.
Exactly what I'm saying, Desiree. We should. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't have these months. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we should respect and be teaching these things on a daily.
But I'm just saying it wouldn't be necessary if we were already doing that.
yeah.
Right.
I
And then
think
when people bitch about pride and all this other stuff too, if they wouldn't need it, wouldn't be necessary if everybody was accepting.
exactly. That's what I was gonna say. I think you're not saying that we shouldn't have them. You're saying we
No,
shouldn't need them. They shouldn't be a requirement, right? Like we should
we shouldn't
just
have to.
be able to
We shouldn't have
respect
to. No,
the issues like every day, all the time.
it should be that it was never oppressed so that it was made an issue. Like we should all have been treated equally right from the very beginning of this, God loving, fearing people that, Jesus loves all the little children, all colors of the world. Right? Wasn't that what we were taught when you went to Sunday school? At least I was. And that's, basically when I realized that was a lie. I became an atheist because I was told that, everybody loved everybody and it didn't matter. And then all of a sudden it mattered. And it was like, what the fuck happened here? And this is like from the time I was 5 years old, and all of a sudden it was like, this is like 1975, okay? And it's like, what? I started dating a kid at school. I was 16 or 15, I guess, and he was black. And I walked into my house. My grandfather used that N word and embarrassed the crap out of me. And I went running out of the house and refused to go back to that house till they were gone, because it was just so horrific to me. Like, you know what I mean? It was just like, I can't. But again, 1986, right? But things have progressively, I had hoped, gotten better, but in reality, they really haven't.
No, they haven't.
No.
Things haven't changed. We've just gotten bolder about being racist, or not we, because I would never, put myself in that category. But people have gotten bolder about being
Yeah.
racist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have been saying that for, as long, I'm 62. I've probably been saying it since I was 18. And
What part of the country do you live in, Desiree? Are you in Alberta?
I am now. I was born here, lived in BC from 11 until 40 something, and then I moved back.
Ah.
Because I wanted my own province from my ex.
And
But-
I mean, being born in Alberta and being of, darker skinned was probably not easy for you growing up either.
No, it wasn't. And I could write a whole book on everything that's happened, and if I had $1 for every time I heard the N-word, I could go out for a really, really, really nice dinner.
Right. And it's, I think, kind of shameful that people actually in Canada believe that doesn't happen here. That, oh, you live in Canada, they're such nice people. They're, it's just like other people in the other world. Like, oh, everything. And it's not. And it's not equality. And it's not for it's not. I mean, there are great pockets of people in this country that would never say anything bad like that. But then there's the pockets of people that don't have any problem.
And I think it's the mindset, and I've run into this, that if they don't personally see it, it's not happening. But they could be personally seeing it and not recognize it for what it is.
I think that what bothers me the most with this whole video era is being like, we grew up in, when we had phones still attached to the walls, and, pictures were evidence, right? Don't take any pictures, it's evidence. But this whole video, era is where people stand back and take video for clout and don't help anybody. Like, somebody's getting the shit kicked out of them, they're taking video of it, but they're not stopping it. Just like that sheriff pulling that woman out of that meeting. Like, they were, like, heckling her, and nobody's stepping in to help her. She was a woman being pulled out by 3 men. That in itself, I don't care, would be enough for me to get up out of my dang chair, and I wouldn't even pull my camera out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the way I feel. Oh, thank you. But that's how I feel about, like, everybody, right?
It's like the homeless too, right? They won't give food to the homeless without, taking a video of it and putting it on.
Yeah.
They won't give them money.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Right? Well,
or they won't give them money, or if they do, they say to them, well, you have to go and buy food for this.
Yeah. Don't tell them what they do with the money you give.
Money, it's not up to you what they do with that money.
Yeah.
Once you give it to them, it's theirs. I do a substitution program here in town for homeless people, and I had a lady come into the store because I have a cup that sits out for spare change, right? Because I have to raise funds to buy the stuff, to make the stuff, to give it away, right?
Yeah.
And she looked at this. She goes, "What's this?" So I showed her. She goes, "I don't like the homeless." And I just kind of looked at her. Meanwhile, she got a stack. Homeless addicted is what she said, because I help the homeless addicted people with a MJ substitution. Anyway, she comes in with a stack, tickets like this that she wants to cash in, but she doesn't have a problem, and she's okay because it's just gambling. But God help the addicted homeless. I looked at her and said, "This could be you one day." Oh no, not me.
That's an addiction.
We can like booze, stack a Keno like this.
He doesn't
Right,
recognize that
doesn't like the homeless.
Her stack is an addiction.
Yeah.
There you go.
It absolutely
Exactly.
could be her one day, especially with what we're seeing right now, where even the middle class is being erased. And
But she's got an addiction to Keno, stacked like this, not kidding ya, reeking like booze, and saying that she hates the addicted homeless. Well, you could be them like next week, dude. No, they can't. Here's a thing for you, Nowin. Alberta and Saskatchewan and Quebec, well, Quebec could separate because they've got waterway to the St. Lawrence River, which would give them access to export and import their products. But Alberta and Saskatchewan are landlocked. Where are they going to get their stuff out to? What water do they have to, what are they going to do? Put everything on trains and ship it where? Straight south? Because as British Columbia, you can ship your shit to the waterways, and we're going to charge you that. We're going to charge that shit right out of you. So don't tell me that Alberta can separate. First of all, there's also treaties and all kinds of things. And no, they cannot join the United States. That ain't going to happen, dude. So, hashtag I bite. Secondly, they're landlocked. So Danielle Smith and her little delusional fairy tale that she's trying to tell everybody, you're landlocked. End of story. There's no separation for you. And no soup
I
either.
think I cut out.
Did you see Zelensky's telling Trump and
I
all
cut out there.
I can hear you, PG. All I could see was, the soup guy, the soup schmatzy from Steinfeld going, "No soup for you, Trump."
I think
No
60%
minerals,
of
no soup.
Alberta is crown land. So what are you really taking? If Alberta separates, most of that is crown land. Some of that is indigenous land. How much of that are you really taking with you? Right? Where are you going with it? The oil's not going with you, that's for sure. That
No.
belongs to Canada.
That belongs
That's
to the
not
First
going with you.
Nations people.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
you're right.
it's the
So
logic
what,
is missing in these
what are
people.
you taking? Never mind the referendum. You don't have people to make that kind of decision, first of all. You have less people in Alberta total than you do in probably half the GTA. And so you don't really have kind of voting power. And so you're taking nothing. You're better off if you want to become a state. Never mind becoming a state. Just move to the state. Just move there. Much
I can't
easier
help
for
with that.
you. You can be whichever state you want, and go get your freedom.
I'm sure it'll be
Freedom!
easy
Oh,
for them.
God.
Should be nice and easy for them. They're all YT.
Yeah, they're all white. Well,
There's no
maybe you get
referendum to take
yourself
away
a
Quebec.
$5 million gold card that you can apparently afford.
Oh, they were saying they were concerned. Oh, you're concerned the Conservatives are going to take away. They will not, because they're not going to get into office. I'd be more worried about your Conservative premiers than I would be about a Conservative getting into federal politics in office. And here's another kind of like telltale. If the Conservatives win the Ontario election, the Liberals always win the next federal election. It always happens that way. And Ford's been in there for 3 years, so that means we've already had 3 elections of re-elected Liberals. 2015, yeah, 3. This will be 4.
And even the conservatives are saying they don't trust PP, right? Like they're moving over. Oh, Carney's gonna be there, moving over.
Yeah, yeah. But now they're trying to say that
Liberal,
Carney, had something to do with
yeah,
moving his business. It wasn't his business to begin with. He was a board member. So when you're on a board, you don't own anything. He wasn't a
they don't
stakeholder.
understand
He
that.
was a board member. So if you're a stakeholder, that means that you hold stake. That means you got some monetary value in that business. He wasn't a stakeholder. He was a board member, which means you own shit. I'm a board member of several things, and I get nothing, not even paid.
They don't understand that.
Most
They
board
just
members do
drive
not
heavy
make money,
equipment.
right? But
They only understand working 14-hour days, driving heavy equipment. That's it.
no, that's not an easy job either, and I get that, But again, they have to quit listening to their own echo chambers. But again, it's coming from their
Yeah,
parents, their relatives, their neighbors. They all live in that echo chamber of honk.
I
We
agree.
had to wear a
I agree.
mask.
My dad drove a loader for almost my entire life when I was growing up, right? So I know how it is.
Yeah,
But I also work in an office today, and I do construction on the side, so I also know how it is, right? Like I know it from both ends.
right. And that's impressive that people with that versatility, right? And I think that's where, even in the oil patch, for example, you got oil guys that are in the offices, and then you got the oil guys that are out doing the hard work and working in the field.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, politics is telling them what to do too. And right now,
yeah.
I'll tell you, Alberta's moving more into BC and Saskatchewan because they're worried about what the hell she's doing.
Don't forget that a
They're
lot of
watching the oil prices tank. And the thing is, OPEC runs the oil prices, not Danielle
exactly.
Smith.
Robotics are taking over the oil industry as well too, right? So all these roughneck jobs that they like, oh, I'm in the
Oh
oil
no!
patch, blah
Oh
blah
no!
blah, and
No!
now,
No! No! No!
great. So
No! 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 Oh no! My husband would love to have 4 robots out there that didn't give him the shit he has to put up with out there. Yeah, no, there's no robots.
oh well, it's starting. I've seen
No.
videos of some of them from
Yeah,
Mr. Global showing some videos of them. So
that'll depend on. Well, a lot of those oil companies are owned by Chinese companies. I don't think any of the
maybe,
oil companies in Canada are owned by Canadian companies. They're not. They're owned by U.S. companies, Canadian or Japanese or Chinese or Japanese companies. They were
yeah,
sold out decades ago. Like Banff is the whole city of Banff or the town of Banff National Park is owned by Japan.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a long time. The money from the oil is not staying in Canada anyway. What are
It's
you
not.
talking about? Like when all these talking points when they say, "Oh, we'll just, you know, take over and we'll be the richest province." No, you won't. It's not your money. It's not staying in Canada, and they're sheltering it outside. Like so, none of you guys are making any money either.
Well, when the company's
And that,
not owned by the Alberta government, like Sanjel's not owned by Daniel Smith
correct.
that owns the tar sands. It's not. It's not even owned by any part of the province. Like the province doesn't get. They get taxes. They're getting the
Yeah,
corporate taxation. They're getting the carbon rebate. Carbon taxation. That's where the province is making their money. They're not. They're not making the money. The oil companies are. It's a private
correct.
corporation.
Speaking of other people's money, by the way, just want to put in that plug about for the Americans. February 30 or 31 is coming up for you guys. Are you getting your $5,000 or $8,000 check?
February 31. Is it a leap year?
It is
Where's the
like a
leap
double
year?
leap year.
It's a double leap year. It's a leapfrog year. Why
I
are these
just.
people like what is wrong with these people? Like it's just hilarious.
But I have to wonder. Yeah. Like, were they not educated? Did they all grow up in Arkansas? Were they all down in the bayou, like fishing in the dark? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I can't understand. I can't believe that there's that many people that are that willfully ignorant.
Well, a
To be
couple of years
honest.
ago, Arkansas brought back child labor laws, right? Like they brought it back.
Yeah,
Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed the bill
I know.
saying children can work in factories now.
Yep, I know. Right, but now that old orange potatoes are wanting to bring all the manufacturing back. Oh, just think about the child slave labor they've got.
Yeah,
They're
I
not going to
think
bring
Oh, the
manufacturing back.
X.
Let's talk about common sense for a second, okay?
I know.
So we're talking about capitalism that says if you want to make money, you have to make your products as cheap as you can and sell them for as much as you can. Okay? How are you going to make them cheap? Offshore your products to China to be built. It's cheaper for them to build it in China and then ship it to the US than it is to build them in the US. It's always been that way, right? So how today will this change? Now you need to start paying people, like instead of paying child wages in China or whatever, wherever they're doing, they're going to pay adult wages in the U.S. to build the same product, and you think that's going to be cheaper? Come on.
Well, let's put it this way, though. The minimum wage in Texas is $7.16. Wrap your
Still,
head around that.
still,
There was. Last time I looked, I think minimum wage in Texas.
27.25.
it's still more than what they pay their workers in China, right?
Yeah, they pay the workers in China, I think, $2. Yeah, the minimum wage as of February 2025, the minimum wage in Texas is $7.25 a fucking hour.
That's the federal,
Yeah,
and that's the same in Louisiana. It's 7.25.
yeah.
Federal
Remember,
minimum wage.
remember during the crash when GM said, "Hey guys, we need a bailout. We can't afford to give raises. Can you hold off for a little bit?" They asked their workers for this. Their workers went, "Yeah, okay, we're going to keep our jobs and we're going to wait a little bit." And then there was this whole thing about, "Hey, we want better wages." And they're like, "Well, if we give you better wages, we're going to have to raise the prices." They did not give better wages, and vehicles went up 40%. So you can miss me with all of that, right? Pay your people.
They also get less if they get tips. So in
Right.
Alabama, you get a $7.25 federal minimum, and then there's also a tipped wage of $2.13.
Yeah.
So minimum wage in Alaska is $11.73. Alaska, where the price of milk is like $20 a gallon.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
basically a northern allowance they've tacked on.
Less
Pretty much. Yeah.
Arkansas, if you have less than 4 employees, minimum wage is $7.25. If you have more than 4 employees, your minimum wage is $11 in Arkansas. So they've got a stipulation there. I guess small business owners who shouldn't be in business if they can't afford to pay a living wage.
I wonder if the wage changes in Arkansas if it's children. Is
It
that why
doesn't
they
say.
did that? It doesn't say.
Okay, it says combined cash and tip minimum wage rate is $11 with maximum tip credit of $8.37. So they can't be tipped any more than $8.37. What?
Per hour?
Per hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They I think pay higher than 11. Employees I think pay much higher than $11. We're just talking about minimum wage. Colorado $14.42. Oh, California $16. That's more in tune with what BC is. BC is $17.85.
Colorado and California are blue, so they're and
But
the
that's still not enough money for California.
District of Columbia $17.50. Georgia $7.25. $5.15 if you get for limited FLSA exceptions, whatever the hell that means. So $5.15, and then you also got a $2.13 tip out.
When I worked for years ago, I worked for Greyhound Canada, and so Greyhound Canada was separate, sort of, from Greyhound US. The Greyhound drivers in the US, to save their jobs, took more than a $6 pay reduction an hour.
Wow, seriously?
Yeah,
Because
this was
they pay
in
their doctors like more than we pay our doctors, because that's why we have no doctors.
yeah.
All our doctors and nurses ran to the States in the 90s.
Well, they'll be coming back soon, won't they?
We can hope.
They're not protected in the States, though. They have to carry their own insurance, and they're not protected. They can still be sued. The government is coming after them in a lot of cases, and it's not happening in Canada, but we have to have a government that supports them as well. And this whole idea of a doctor making $37.90 per visit, don't wonder why they're only allowing you to see them for about 15 minutes, right? And they get mad. Like,
in Alberta, Marlena or whoever it was before her, capped it. When they capped it at an X amount that the government was going to pay per visit, the doctors said, okay, we'll only
extra bill you.
for one or two issues.
They started extra billing back in the 90s because in the 90s when Klein, or was it Lockheed? No, Klein was 80, 88. And then it was, who was after that? It was Lockheed, wasn't it? Or was it Lockheed and then Klein and then Stelmach?
This was not that long ago. This was when I was working in clinics, and the doctors.
I'm talking about the extra billing. Remember when the doctors in Alberta decided that they were going to start extra billing their patients?
Yeah, they couldn't do that though.
They did for a while, and then they took it back. They took it back out. But they did for a while. But they were wanting to extra bill. So the highest wages in the United States are in Washington State, and we're talking like Seattle areas. $20.76 minimum wage.
That's why it's a blue state.
The West Coast blue states.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the highest one. So $20.76, and that's in Seattle, Washington.
So
the blue states are the ones that make the most money. They're the ones that take care of their people the best. They make the most money. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. When China builds stuff, it's cheaper to build it there and import it than it is to build it in the States. Like, it doesn't make any sense. If they want to talk about America first, they're just really isolationists, and they've done it twice in history, and both times there's been a world war.
A recession and a depression. So it goes
buckle up.
It goes war, recession, war, depression, war, recession.
Yeah, buckle up, because world wars today are going to be different.
But didn't you hear him? Did you not see that, PG, when Trump was sitting there telling Zelensky that you're risking the third world war, you're putting the world at the risk of third world. No, orange potato, you are.
Yeah, he is. How is he blaming the guy who's being?
But he's blaming. He's calling him. Yesterday it was like, oh, I call him a dictator. Today it's like, you can't dictate how we feel, but you're trying to dictate how they feel.
Like, this is Trump looking at Zelensky going, but what were you wearing?
That was Marjorie Taylor Greene's husband. Asking him why he wasn't wearing a suit.
Yeah.
But The Middle East leaders don't wear suits either. That was just straight up disrespectful.
Yep, it sure was. It
Elon
was like they
doesn't
were
wear a
baiting
suit.
him. But here's the thing: they did not want him to agree to that. This was all a fucking pandering bunch of bullshit for Putin, right? They didn't want
Yeah.
him to sign an agreement. They don't want to help them anymore. He keeps lying about the amount of money that they've actually given the Americans to make military equipment, when pay wages to military equipment makers in the States to give them stuff from Germany so that the United States can then give Germany some of their equipment. There's been no money, actual money, except for the money that they've taken from grants and assets that were liquidated that were under Russian assets or whatever.
Yeah.
There's been actual no money, cash money given to the Ukraine.
No.
The
The
Russian
U.S. cutting out USAID or USAID is affecting the refugees from Ukraine.
Yeah. It's also affecting U.S. farmers. And that Russian plane is still at Toronto Pearson, by the way. When I traveled this month, it was there. I took a picture of it. It was there. So we're still hanging on to that.
Seized assets.
Well, there's another plane that went down today too.
Seriously?
In the Inuit.
Yeah, that was last night.
I didn't hear about that one.
No,
Yeah,
but-
landing gear
yeah,
again.
there is a TikTok circulating from a person who was actually on the plane.
Just too much. Coughing away here. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I'm gonna put a shameless tap out. Share for Ruby on for another 2 minutes, and I'm also gonna put another shameless plug out for my friend Athea Harvey. She owns a restaurant here in my town called Ella's, and every time the Prime Minister's flight crew comes through, they stop in Cranbrook and order food from her Jamaican restaurant. So last night, apparently they were coming through again and they ordered Ella's Jamaican food. So props to you, Athea, and thanks. I'm sure that I know it's the best Jamaican food in all account.
Next time we come through Cranbrook, we'll have to stop because we've been we take Highway 3 back and forth to the coast.
Yeah.
So
It's the nicest highway to go to the coast. Coquihalla is okay, but
unless it's at the end of February, like we did in a snowstorm,
don't come.
we when we got to Creston at the end of that, it felt like we were a part of the Donner Party survivors.
That Kootenai Pass can be brutal sometimes, right? And right now the ferry's on strike, so you can't even go to Crawford Bay and take the ferry across to Nelson. Well, you can, but you have to be essential. Everybody's having to take that Creston Pass, and it's brutal.
It was nasty.
I just want to make a correction. So now, when I get what you're saying, but North Korea is just a dictatorship. They're not communist. Russia is not communist. They're an oligarchy. There actually is not a communist country in the world right now. That would be ideal for most people, especially in some of those parts of the world, right? Like
Cuba would be the closest thing to communism in true form, because they're not allowed to practice religion. They're not allowed to practice anything. I mean, sure, they can dress however they want. There's no work. Everything's owned by the government, right down to the bread, right? So communism is basically everything is government owned. You're told to where to live, where to work. You live in a government apartment. You wear government clothes. You wear, everything's owned by the government. That's communism.
Yeah, so there actually isn't one, but they always talk about, hey, you don't want to be a communist. We don't want the commies here, and it's like, you don't have to be scared of it. There isn't a communist country, like you said. Cuba's probably the closest, and
that's only due to their oppression, more or less.
Some of those
their financial situations.
Some of those people, like North Korea, would be happy to be in a communist state. Would be super happy to be
I
there.
was watching actually something the other night on North Korean defectors and how hard it is for them to get even into China. And then once they get to China, they're never naturalized and they can't work and they're discriminated against. And even if they get to South Korea, they're discriminated against and treated poorly.
Yeah.
They're never naturalized or able to get a job or have anything. It's kind of sad.
It's kind of like there's no safe.
It is sad.
There's no way to be a safe refugee anywhere.
Not anymore. Not even here anymore. Like I said, it's just the way some Canadians act is just not very Canadian. But if anything, Trump was a gift in hindsight because he's basically showing Canadians what they do not want. And on that note, it's 4:30. And that's my time. So again, I'd like to thank you for coming up, Desiree and PG. And for everybody that joined us and clapping and tapping and, always gift our panel guests because their time's worth, as much as mine. Anyways.
Oh, it's Nerdy's time? Is that what you just said? It's Nerdy's time?
I said your time.
It's
your
Nerdy's
time is
time?
worth.
Is it
There we
Nerdy's
go.
time? Nerdy.
Nerdy is on next, yes.
Oh.
So next up is Nerdy with her politic marathon that she does from, I think it's from 6 till whenever. But I'll be back next week, next Friday at 3 o'clock here on Beaver Politics. And thanks for joining.
Thanks
All right,
for
thanks.
being
Have a good
on.
weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.